The crash echoed through the rain-soaked night, a violent, metallic screech that ripped through the silence like a scream. In that instant, high above the streets of Manhattan, wealth and power were reduced to mere metal and glass. The once indestructible titan, Liam Reynolds, lay crumpled in the driver's seat, his luxury car twisted around a lamp post, his mind teetering on the brink of darkness. For years, Liam had ruled over his business empire from his glass-walled office on the 80th floor, his gaze fixed on the city below as if it were his for the taking. At 44, he was the picture of success, ruthless in business, unstoppable in his drive. But tonight, that life seemed so far away, each second in that wrecked car feeling like a lifetime. Rain pounded on the shattered windshield as blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, blurring his vision. Just when the blackness threatened to take over, a voice pierced through the fog in his mind. A woman's voice, urgent and determined, reaching into the depths of his despair. "Hold on, I'm right here." Her face swam into view through the broken glass. A stranger with strong, determined eyes, soaked in rain, but fearless. And then, her hands were on him, pulling him from the twisted wreckage, dragging him to safety even as flames began to lick up the side of the car. He tried to speak, to say something, anything, but the world spun, and the last thing he remembered was the woman's voice fading into the darkness. Weeks later, the world looked different. Liam sat in his hospital room, replaying the moments of that night over and over in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been given a second chance. But for what? For a man like him, there were always reasons, opportunities to seize, deals to be made. But this felt different. The question gnawed at him, more insistent than any business proposition. Who was she? And then, as if on cue, a nurse entered the room, smiling kindly. "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Reynolds. Karen Davis, the woman who saved you. She pulled you out just in time." Liam's heart pounded. Karen Davis. The name felt like a lifeline, grounding him. He couldn't remember her face clearly, but he remembered the strength in her voice, the determination in her eyes. She was more than a savior. She was a mystery he needed to solve. As Liam's recovery progressed, the curiosity became an obsession. He learned that Karen was a teacher, a woman of modest means with a heart for her community. She volunteered at shelters, gave her time freely to anyone in need. And despite everything, she had refused his attempts to compensate her. The rejection puzzled him. He was a man who could buy anything, solve any problem with a blank check. But here was a woman who didn't want what he could give. And so, against the advice of his closest associates, against the whispering voices in high society, Liam set out to meet Karen. Liam's heart raced as he sat in his black sedan, parked just outside the small, unassuming public school where Karen worked. For the first time in years, he felt a strange sense of nervousness, as if he were facing a high-stakes negotiation without a script. Here, in the heart of the Bronx, far from the polished glass towers and manicured boardrooms he was used to, he was stepping into her world, a world of children's laughter, worn-out textbooks, and a quiet resilience that was foreign to him. When he finally walked into the building, a receptionist directed him to the classroom, where Karen was preparing for her next lesson. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and knocked lightly on the door. Karen looked up from her desk, surprised, and met his eyes. She seemed even more unassuming than he'd imagined, a tall, slender woman with a calm strength in her gaze. As she recognized him, her expression shifted from shock to a reserved smile. "Mr. Reynolds," she greeted him, her voice soft but steady. "I didn't expect you to come all the way here." Liam swallowed, trying to mask his unease. "I wanted to thank you in person," he said, his voice lower than he intended. "No check, no transaction. Just a genuine thank you." Karen's smile softened as she motioned for him to sit down. "You're welcome, but I don't need your gratitude, Liam. You needed help, and I was there. That's all there is to it." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of her words settling over them. Liam struggled to find his footing in this unfamiliar dynamic. In his world, people wanted things from him, and he knew how to give them. But Karen? She was different, and that difference was pulling him in, compelling him to dig deeper, to understand her. Days turned into weeks, and against all odds, a friendship blossomed. Liam found himself drawn to Karen's sincerity, her easy laughter, and the way she looked at life without the rose-colored glasses of wealth. It was refreshing and humbling. She showed him the community, the people she loved and served without expectation of anything in return. Liam began to see the world through her eyes, a world where strength wasn't measured in dollars but in kindness, patience, and the willingness to give when there was little to spare. One evening, after a long day of teaching, Karen invited Liam to a small family-owned restaurant. It wasn't the luxury dining experience he was accustomed to, but there was a warmth here, a kind of charm in the faded wallpaper, the chatter of regulars, and the aroma of home-cooked food that made him feel something he hadn't felt in years home. Over bowls of warm stew, they talked, and then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind for weeks. "Why did you risk yourself that night, Karen? You could have waited for help. Let someone else do it." "Why me?" Karen's gaze dropped to her bowl, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. For the first time, he saw something break in her composure, a glimpse of a vulnerability she kept hidden. "I couldn't bear to see someone suffer," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "I've lost people I loved because no one stepped in. So now if I see someone in danger, I act. I can't help it." There it was, her story, her pain, hidden beneath the calm exterior. Liam wanted to ask more, but something held him back. He knew this was her truth, her private battle, and pushing further would only diminish it. He understood now that Karen was a person who carried burdens of her own, a person whose strength came from overcoming her past. As their bond grew deeper, so did the complications. Word got around that Liam, the billionaire tycoon, was spending time with a humble teacher from the Bronx. Gossip spread through high society circles, whispers about his strange friendship with a woman who didn't fit his world. His family disapproved, and his board members voiced concern, suggesting that his distraction could cost him business deals. "Liam, be realistic," his sister Vivian told him one evening, her voice laced with frustration. "She's not us. You're the head of Reynolds Corporation. For heaven's sake, think of what this association could mean for our reputation." But Liam felt a surge of anger, a rare, fierce protectiveness toward Karen. For once, he didn't care about his reputation, about appearances. In Karen, he saw something real, a truth he hadn't known he was missing. Karen, too, faced challenges. The children at school, normally respectful, began to question her relationship with the rich businessman. Some parents whispered behind her back, assuming she was after his money, that she was a fortune hunter. The rumors stung, but Karen's resolve held firm. One afternoon, a student named Emily approached her after class, clutching a paper in her small hands. "Miss Davis," she whispered, "I wrote an essay. It's about you and Mr. Reynolds." Karen took the paper, her heart pounding as she read the child's innocent words. "Real love doesn't care about money or status. It's about helping people and being kind. That's what I think Miss Davis is teaching us." Tears filled Karen's eyes. Here, in the simple words of a child, was the truth she had been trying to live by, a truth that somehow Liam had found too. As winter settled over New York, Liam's world continued to change, and he felt himself drawn more deeply into Karen's life. A life so unlike his own, but somehow more fulfilling. They spent quiet evenings together, where laughter came easily and conversations grew more intimate, peeling back layers he didn't even know he had. But with each passing day, the weight of his world bore down harder on them both. One evening, in the middle of a swirling snowstorm, Liam received a call that jolted him. Karen had fainted at school, right in front of her class. The hospital, desperate to reach her. When he arrived, he found her pale, resting on a hospital bed, a tired but familiar smile waiting just for him. "Karen," he whispered, taking her hand, "you scared me." Karen looked up, a faint glimmer of humor in her eyes. "I guess I'm not as invincible as I thought." Then she hesitated, her gaze shifting away as if grappling with something. "There's something you should know, Liam." 1,000 thoughts flooded his mind in that instant, but nothing could have prepared him for her next words. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The world seemed to stop. Liam stared at her, speechless, the weight of her words sinking in like a stone in still water. All his life, he dreamed of passing on his legacy, of having children to continue the Reynolds name. But he had been told it was impossible, an unchangeable fact he had come to accept, however painfully. But here, in this tiny, snowy hospital room, was a miracle he couldn't have imagined. He knelt beside her, his voice thick with emotion. "Karen, I don't know what to say." Karen's face softened as she watched him, her hand reaching out to rest on his. "You don't have to say anything, Liam. I'm not telling you this because I expect anything from you. I just thought you deserved to know." But Liam's heart swelled, a fierce protectiveness rising within him. He couldn't explain it, but in that moment, he knew his life had changed forever. He wouldn't walk away from her, from them. Whatever it took, he would be there. As the pregnancy progressed, so did the public scrutiny. Paparazzi swarmed around Karen's modest apartment. Tabloids splashed their faces across headlines, and rumors flew faster than Liam could shut them down. The press painted Karen as an opportunist, a fortune hunter, and it hurt her deeply, even though she tried to brush it off. One night, as they walked through the quiet park near her apartment, Liam took her hand and stopped. "Karen, come live with me," he said, his voice firm. "I want to protect you, protect us. I can't let them keep hurting you like this." But Karen shook her head, her gaze steady. "Liam, I can't hide from this. My students, my neighbors, they're my community. They trust me. If I run away now, I'm letting them down." Liam admired her strength, even though it meant she would continue facing the barrage alone. It broke his heart to see the toll it was taking on her, but he respected her decision, and he promised himself that he would do everything in his power to support her. The months wore on, and finally, the day arrived. Karen went into labor during one of the worst snowstorms New York had seen in years. The roads were nearly impassable, but Liam was determined. He arrived at the hospital, drenched from the snow, just as Karen was wheeled into the delivery room. Hours passed in tense silence. Liam paced the hospital corridors, his mind racing. Every cry, every whisper from the medical staff sent his heart into a panic. He'd never felt so helpless, so desperate. And then, finally, he heard it. The sound of a baby's cry piercing through the silence, strong and sure. A nurse emerged, smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. Reynolds. You have 2 beautiful daughters." The word struck him like a thunderbolt. He stared at the nurse, hardly daring to believe it. "2," he whispered, his voice catching. She nodded, her smile widening. 2 perfectly healthy little girls. He followed her into the room, where Karen lay, exhausted but glowing, cradling the 2 tiny miracles in her arms. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes, and he felt his own tears begin to fall. He had spent years chasing after power, wealth, and legacy, only to find it here, in the gentle weight of his daughters, in the fierce, unbreakable bond he shared with Karen. With trembling hands, he reached out, taking one of the girls into his arms. She was so small, so perfect, her tiny hand wrapping around his finger as if she'd been waiting just for him. "Lily and Rose," Karen whispered, smiling through her tears. "My mother used to tell me those were the most beautiful names for little girls." And she was right. Liam kissed the top of his daughter's head, his heart swelling with a love he had never known before. This was his true legacy, not in the boardrooms or the skyscrapers, but here, in the simple beauty of family. The days that followed were both a whirlwind and a revelation. Liam had lived through takeovers, high-stakes negotiations, and boardroom battles, but nothing could have prepared him for the intensity of fatherhood. Every night, he held Lily and Rose close, marveling at how these tiny lives had transformed him so completely. Gone was the ruthless businessman with an iron will. In his place was a man who'd learned that some of life's greatest treasures could never be bought or controlled. As the twins grew stronger in the neonatal unit, Liam devoted himself entirely to them and to Karen, spending hours beside their incubators, speaking softly to his daughters. He even brought along The Little Prince, a story his own mother had read to him when he was young, and read it aloud to Lily and Rose, his voice shaky with emotion. Karen watched him, her heart swelling. The Liam she'd known before, the man hardened by wealth, the one who wore a mask of indifference, was unrecognizable. Here was a father, a partner, someone who had chosen love and vulnerability over pride and status. For the first time, she let herself hope for a future together beyond the labels, beyond the judgments, just the two of them and their little family. But not everyone was so quick to accept this change. Back at Reynolds Corporation, Liam's absence had not gone unnoticed. Board members exchanged uneasy glances in private meetings, concerned about their CEO's sudden distraction. Shareholders began to ask questions, and competitors smelled blood in the water. Rumors of a hostile takeover circulated, and Liam's sister Vivian, ever the family loyalist, grew increasingly concerned. "Liam," she said, cornering him in his office one evening, "you have responsibilities. Real ones. You're letting everything we've built slip through your fingers for what? Exactly? A teacher from the Bronx and 2 newborns?" Vivian's words stung, but Liam held his ground. He looked at her, his voice steady, a firmness in his gaze that had been absent for years. "Vivian," he replied, "I'm not letting anything slip. I'm finally focusing on what matters." Her expression shifted, softened, but she didn't understand. Not fully, and maybe she never would. She hadn't seen the way Lily's tiny fingers curled around his, hadn't heard Rose's first faint cry, hadn't felt the weight of responsibility and love that had redefined him. This was his choice, his life, and he was ready to defend it. Meanwhile, Karen was facing challenges of her own. The parents of her students, once so supportive, began to whisper, casting judgmental glances her way. The tabloids had done their damage, painting her as an opportunist, an outsider unworthy of Liam Reynolds. Her students noticed, too, their innocent questions sometimes bringing her to tears. One afternoon, a little girl named Ellie tugged on her sleeve as Karen was leaving the classroom. "Miss Davis, is it true that you're marrying a rich man?" she asked, her big eyes full of curiosity. Karen smiled, kneeling down to meet Ellie's gaze. "You know, Ellie," she said softly, "sometimes life brings you things you never expected. But the best things in life aren't because of money or where you come from. They're about love." The little girl nodded, a thoughtful look on her face. And just like that, Karen found comfort, knowing that the truth could still resonate with those willing to listen. Winter gave way to spring, and the twins finally came home. Liam and Karen settled into a new rhythm, balancing the chaos of newborns with quiet, tender moments of laughter and stolen glances. Despite the pressures from the outside world, they found solace in each other and in their small, precious family. One evening, as they sat by the window watching the city lights, Liam turned to Karen, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I never thought my life would look like this," he admitted, his voice full of wonder. "If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here, with you and our daughters, I wouldn't have believed it." Karen reached over, taking his hand in hers. "Neither would I," she whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder. "But I wouldn't change a thing." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of all they'd been through settling around them. Planned, but it was real, and it was theirs. But even as they tried to build a new life, challenges loomed. Liam's business was on the verge of collapse, with his absence stirring unrest among shareholders. Competitors moved in, and his sister Vivian, still skeptical of his choices, grew increasingly vocal about his distractions. In a tense board meeting, Liam faced down his critics. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice calm but unwavering. "But we're not just a corporation. We're a part of this city, a part of its people. I intend to focus on investments that support education, that build communities, just like the one where my daughters will grow up." Silence fell over the room, stunned by his sincerity. For the first time, the board saw a new side of him, a man who was willing to balance power with compassion, profit with purpose. As he left the meeting, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time, he was leading with his heart, not just his head. With the corporate storm momentarily calmed, Liam threw himself back into family life, cherishing every moment with Karen and the twins. Their nights were filled with lullabies, gentle rocking, and the tender chaos only two newborns could bring. Liam, once the stoic businessman, became a father who laughed freely, who comforted his daughters in the quiet hours, who found joy in the simplest moments. But the world beyond their home was relentless. One afternoon, as Karen walked through the park with the twins in their stroller, a paparazzi photographer suddenly appeared, snapping pictures with a reckless fervor. Karen shielded her daughters, her face a mix of fear and frustration. She'd grown used to the whispers, the rumors, but this was too much. She was just a mother trying to live in peace. The next day, the photos were splashed across tabloids, captions questioning her motives, her true intentions. Seeing it broke something inside Liam. His protective instinct flared, stronger than ever, and he knew he couldn't let this continue. He made a choice. It was time to confront his family, the press, and everyone who questioned Karen's place in his life. He was done with the gossip, done with the judgment. That evening, he hosted a press conference. Karen sat in the front row, clutching his hand, while he spoke with a calm determination that silenced the room. "Karen Davis is the strongest, most compassionate person I have ever known," he began, his voice steady but fierce. "She is my partner, the mother of my children, and my equal in every way. I will not stand by while she's treated with anything less than respect." A hush fell over the room, and for a brief moment, the weight of his words seemed to reach even the most cynical among them. He was no longer the detached businessman, but a man who had found something worth fighting for. The days that followed were transformative. For the first time, the press began to tell a different story, one of love, resilience, and family. People saw the photos of Liam with the twins, of Karen's quiet strength, and slowly, public perception shifted. Even Vivian, who had once doubted her brother's choices, found herself reconsidering. One Sunday afternoon, as Liam sat on the living room floor with Lily and Rose, his sister appeared at the door, a tentative smile on her face. She hesitated, watching him with a mixture of admiration and apology. "I didn't understand before," she admitted softly, her gaze drifting to the twins. "But now I think I do." Liam rose, meeting her halfway. In that moment, words weren't necessary. Family was more than blood, more than legacy. It was about the people who showed up, who stayed, who loved without condition. As the seasons changed, so did their lives. Karen returned to teaching part-time, eager to be with her students, while Liam found a new balance between his business and family. He even began volunteering at the school, organizing fundraisers, tutoring sessions, and career days to connect with Karen's world in a meaningful way. One spring afternoon, he found himself surrounded by a group of curious students, their eyes wide as they peppered him with questions about his life, his job, his family. It was endearing and humbling to see himself through their eyes. "Do you love Miss Davis?" a little girl asked, her voice full of innocent curiosity. Liam chuckled, glancing over at Karen, who was watching from across the room, her expression soft. "More than anything in the world," he replied, his gaze never leaving her. Karen's cheeks flushed, a smile tugging at her lips. In that moment, surrounded by children's laughter and curious questions, they both felt the overwhelming gratitude for a life they never expected but wouldn't trade for anything. But just when they thought their story had settled into a peaceful rhythm, life threw them one last surprise. One evening, as Liam was tucking Lily and Rose into their cribs, Karen appeared in the doorway, her expression a mix of joy and disbelief. She held up a small, worn piece of paper, her hand trembling slightly. "Liam," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I just found out I have a family member, a sister I never knew about." The revelation struck them both like lightning. Karen had grown up thinking she was alone, that her family was long gone. And now, in the midst of her new life with Liam and their daughters, a connection from her past had surfaced. What do you want to do?" Liam asked, reaching out to steady her. Karen looked at him, her gaze determined but vulnerable. "I want to find her. I need to know if she's been looking for me too." Liam wrapped his arms around her, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Then we'll find her," he whispered. "Whatever it takes, we'll find her." The search for Karen's sister opened a new chapter in their lives, filled with anticipation, hope, and uncertainty. As they dug through records, pieced together old family history, and spoke to people who might have known Karen's mother, the mystery began to unfold. Each new clue brought them closer, but it also stirred emotions Karen hadn't expected. The pang of memories, the bittersweet hope that somewhere out there was a piece of her past, waiting to be found. Liam stayed by her side through it all, supporting her with a quiet strength, knowing that this journey was as important as any they'd taken together. For Karen, it was a chance to fill in the gaps of her story, to reclaim a part of her that had felt lost for so long. And for Liam, it was an opportunity to give her the family she deserved, the family she thought she'd never have. Underscore. Weeks passed, and finally, they received a breakthrough. A woman named Laura, a few years older than Karen, had been living just a few cities away. The idea that her sister had been so close, yet so far, felt surreal. And so, with a mixture of nerves and excitement, they arranged a meeting. The day arrived, and Karen found herself waiting in a cozy cafe, her heart pounding as she clutched Liam's hand. He could feel her trembling, her usual calm replaced by a rare vulnerability. They exchanged a glance, and he gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Then the door opened, and a woman walked in. Karen's breath caught as she recognized something familiar in the woman's eyes. A warmth, a kindness she remembered from childhood memories. The two women looked at each other, both overcome with emotion, neither knowing where to begin. And then, as if no words were needed, Karen and Laura embraced, years of separation melting away in that one heartfelt moment. As the sisters began to reconnect, Liam marveled at the way their lives had come full circle. Laura had her own stories to share, struggles, losses, triumphs. And as they spent more time together, Karen's past began to feel whole again. She learned about her parents' history, the sacrifices they had made, and the ways they had fought to provide a better life. One evening, as Karen and Laura reminisced, Liam sat with Lily and Rose, watching the sisters laugh and cry together. He felt an overwhelming gratitude for the journey they'd been on and the family they had built, one that was stronger, deeper, and more meaningful than he had ever imagined. Yet, life had one more challenge in store. Months later, as they were preparing to celebrate Lily and Rose's first birthday, a shadow loomed over Reynolds Corporation, threatened the stability of the company, and the board grew anxious once again, urging Liam to put his family matters aside and focus on securing the business. Liam faced an impossible choice: return to his role as the company's protector, sacrificing time with Karen and the girls, or stand firm in his commitment to his family and risk everything he had built. One evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, he sat alone in the darkened living room, wrestling with the weight of his decision. The thought of losing the company was painful, but the idea of losing precious moments with his daughters, moments he could never get back, was even worse. Karen found him there, silent and brooding, and she knew the decision he faced. She sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Liam," she said softly, "whatever choice you make, we'll face it together. But remember, your legacy isn't just a company. It's in the love you give, the time you spend, and the people whose lives you touch." Her words settled over him like a balm, soothing his doubts. For so long, he had measured his worth by his achievements, his power. But now, he saw a new path, one that wasn't about wealth, but about love, about family. In the end, Liam chose to step back from the company, placing trusted leaders in charge while he focused on his family. The decision was met with shock from the business world, but Liam felt lighter, freer than he had in years. And with Karen and his daughters by his side, he knew he had made the right choice. Their lives shifted into a quieter rhythm, one where he could be present for every milestone, every small, precious moment with his girls. He spent afternoons teaching them to walk, evenings telling them bedtime stories, and nights watching them sleep, his heart fuller than he had ever thought possible. On the evening of Lily and Rose's first birthday, family and friends gathered to celebrate. The room was filled with laughter, warmth, and the unmistakable joy of lives intertwined. Laura was there, as well as Karen's closest friends and colleagues, all of whom had come to cherish the family Karen and Liam had created. As Liam held his daughters in his arms, watching the candles flicker on their tiny cake, he looked over at Karen, a feeling of peace washing over him. In her eyes, he saw the love, the resilience, the journey they had been through together. Karen leaned close, her voice soft. This is the life we dreamed of, isn't it? He nodded, overcome with gratitude. It's more than I could have ever dreamed, Karen. Thank you for everything. Together, they blew out the candles, sealing their wishes in the warm, glowing light. And in that moment, they knew, no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter the storms that would come, they had built something unbreakable, a family bound not by blood or wealth, but by a love that had endured and overcome everything. As time moved forward, their family settled into a beautiful harmony. Every day brought new joys, small miracles, and moments that Liam cherished. For a man who once defined success by the heights of skyscrapers and the size of bank accounts, it was these quiet, precious moments, the warmth of his daughter's laughter, the comfort of Karen's presence, that now filled his heart with purpose. One evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Karen and Liam sat on the porch, sipping tea as a gentle breeze stirred around them. The peacefulness of their home contrasted sharply with the bustling life they had once known. They talked about the journey they'd been on, marveling at the twists and turns that had brought them here. But Karen's eyes held a trace of concern. She turned to him, her voice thoughtful. Liam, do you ever feel like there's still something missing? Like there's something more we're meant to do? Liam considered her question, sensing the same pull. They had been blessed beyond measure, but perhaps there was a way to share that blessing with others. He reached for her hand, his gaze steady. I think we're meant to give back. Maybe we could create something meaningful together, something that supports families or builds opportunities for children. Karen's face lit up with excitement. The idea resonated deeply with both of them, and they spent the rest of the evening dreaming of ways they could make a difference, weaving their vision for a foundation that would focus on education, community support, and family resources. With newfound purpose, Liam and Karen threw themselves into building the foundation. They named it the Davis Reynolds Initiative in honor of both their families and the legacy they wished to leave. The foundation's mission was simple but powerful: to provide opportunities and support for underprivileged families, to help children access quality education, and to offer programs that strengthen community bonds. The work invigorated them. They held fundraisers, partnered with local schools, and launched scholarship programs. Karen, with her background as a teacher, took on a hands-on role, meeting with families, understanding their struggles, and advocating for resources they desperately needed. Liam, meanwhile, used his business acumen to gather support, rally investors, and ensure the foundation's sustainability. But even as they poured their hearts into this mission, their relationship continued to blossom. Every challenge they faced brought them closer, each victory reinforcing the bond they shared. Liam saw Karen's passion ignite in a new way, and it reminded him of how much he admired her, her resilience, her kindness, her drive to make the world a better place. Months later, as they celebrated the grand opening of a community center funded by the foundation, Liam watched Karen interact with a group of children who had come to explore the new space. She was in her element, laughing, guiding them with patience, and bringing out the best in every child she met. In that moment, surrounded by the laughter and joy of children and families, Liam realized something profound. This was his true legacy. Not the boardrooms, not the skyscrapers, but the lives they were touching, the hope they were planting. As the day came to a close, Karen walked over to him, her face glowing with pride and happiness. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "Look at all of this, Liam. Look at what we've built together." Liam wrapped his arms around her, his heart full. "This is only the beginning," he replied, a smile spreading across his face. With you by my side, Karen, I feel like we can change the world. In the weeks that followed, news of the Davis Reynolds initiative spread, capturing the attention of both the media and the public. People were inspired by their story, a once cynical billionaire transformed by love and purpose, and a resilient teacher who had given him a new reason to live. Together, they had created something far more valuable than any fortune, a legacy that would outlive them both. Even Vivian, who had once doubted their path, found herself moved by the impact they were making. One evening, she visited their home, bringing along a gift for the twins, 2 small, hand-stitched quilts, each embroidered with the girls' names. I was wrong, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion as she watched Lily and Rose playing on the floor. Seeing all of this, what you two have built together, I finally understand. You're building something real, something that matters. Karen hugged her tightly, knowing how much those words meant. It was a moment of healing, of acceptance, and it reminded them all that family wasn't just about where you came from, it was about the people who loved and supported you along the way. As the years passed, Liam and Karen continued to grow their foundation, watching their daughters grow up in a world surrounded by love, purpose, and compassion. Lily and Rose, now old enough to understand, were taught the values their parents held dear: kindness, humility, and the importance of giving back. One afternoon, as the family strolled through the community center, Rose looked up at her father, her big eyes full of curiosity. "Daddy, why do we help people?" she asked, her voice innocent but curious. Liam knelt down, his hands on her small shoulders, and looked her in the eyes. "Because helping people is what makes life beautiful, Rose. It's what makes us family." And as he stood up, his heart swelling with pride, he looked over at Karen, his partner in every sense of the word. Together, they had built a life richer than any wealth, a legacy that would live on in the lives of everyone they touched. The fragile paper. The handwriting was faint but unmistakable. It was her mother's. And as Karen read, her world shifted. The letter revealed secrets about her family she had never known, a history steeped in pain and sacrifice that her mother had kept hidden to protect her daughters. In the letter, her mother had spoken of hardships she had endured, of the difficult choices she'd made to give Karen and Laura a chance at a better life. She had spoken of a deep, abiding love for her children and a hope that one day they would find each other and carry on her legacy of kindness. By the time Karen finished reading, tears blurred her vision. This was a part of her history she'd never imagined, a reminder of the love and sacrifice that had shaped her. She looked at Laura, a new bond forming between them, one grounded in shared history, in understanding, in healing. That night, as Karen and Liam sat together on the balcony, looking out over the city, she told him everything. Her voice was soft, raw, each word carrying the weight of the past and the dreams of the future. "I feel like I finally know who I am," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "All these years I've carried this weight, wondering where I came from, if I had a family. And now I know." Liam held her close, his heart aching for her, for all she had endured to reach this point. "Karen," he whispered, "you're the strongest person I know. And everything you've been through, it's made you the incredible woman you are today." They sat in silence, wrapped in each other's warmth, the city lights flickering below them. For Karen, this was more than closure. It was a beginning. She knew now that her mother's legacy lived on, not just in the foundation, but in every act of kindness, in every family they helped, in every life they touched. The revelation deepened Karen's commitment to the foundation. She and Liam expanded their outreach, establishing programs dedicated to supporting single mothers, funding education for underprivileged youth, and providing resources for those who, like her mother, had sacrificed everything for their children. Their work became a family affair, with Lily and Rose growing up immersed in a world of compassion and giving. The girls learned from an early age the importance of kindness, of lifting others up. They weren't just spectators. They were a part of the mission, helping organize events, sharing smiles with the children who came through the community center, and learning the value of empathy. One day, during a large charity event, Rose tugged on Liam's sleeve, looking up at him with her big, thoughtful eyes. "Daddy," she asked, "why do some kids not have enough? Why don't they have mommies and daddies like us?" Her question was innocent, but it pierced his heart. He knelt down, looking into her eyes, trying to find the right words. "Sometimes, Rose, life isn't fair," he said gently. "But that's why we help them, so they can feel loved, so they know they're not alone. And because they're part of our family, too." Rose's face lit up with understanding, and she hugged him tightly. In that embrace, Liam felt the strength of the family they had created, not just by blood, but by choice, by love. As the foundation grew, so did the respect and admiration for Liam and Karen. People began to see Liam not as the cold, calculating businessman he had once been, but as a compassionate leader, a man whose heart was as large as his ambition. And Karen, the once overlooked teacher from the Bronx, had become an icon of strength, inspiring countless others with her story. But amid all the success, their home remained a sanctuary of simple joys and tender moments. Their evenings were filled with laughter, with bedtime stories, with dreams whispered between them as they planned the future. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Karen looked at Liam, her eyes shining with a question she hadn't dared to voice before. "Do you think Mom will be proud?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam took her hand, his gaze filled with certainty. "Karen, she would be more than proud. She'd be in awe of you, of the life you've built, the love you've given, the lives you've changed. You've honored her legacy in the most beautiful way possible." Karen smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. In that moment, she felt a profound peace, a sense of fulfillment that went beyond anything she'd ever known. She was no longer defined by the pain of her past, but by the love she had built, the family she had created, and the legacy she was leaving behind. For Liam, that night reaffirmed everything he had come to believe, that love, kindness, and family were worth more than any wealth, any empire. They had created something lasting, something beautiful, and in each other, they had found a love that had not only saved them, but had redefined their lives. The years rolled by, and the Davis Reynolds family continued to grow in love and purpose. Lily and Rose, now young teenagers, were thriving. They had inherited Karen's kindness and Liam's determination, embodying a beautiful blend of their parents' strengths. Watching them navigate life with compassion and confidence filled Liam and Karen with a pride they couldn't put into words. One rainy afternoon, the family gathered in the living room, huddled together with blankets as the sound of raindrops tapped softly on the windows. It was one of those simple, precious moments where the outside world seemed to melt away, leaving only the warmth of family. Karen glanced at her daughters, their eyes bright with curiosity as they peppered her with questions about her childhood, about her mother, about the journey that had led them here. "Mom," Lily asked, leaning closer, "what made you so strong? You've helped so many people. How did you do it?" Karen paused, caught off guard by the depth of the question. She thought about the hardships she had faced, the sacrifices her mother had made, the struggles that had shaped her. And then she looked at Liam, her partner in every sense of the word, and her daughters, the beautiful souls who had given her life new meaning. "It's love," she said finally, her voice filled with quiet conviction. "Love is what makes us strong. It's what holds us together, even when things seem impossible. My mother taught me that, and it's something I've carried with me all my life. And now I want to pass it on to you." Rose nodded thoughtfully, her gaze steady. "We'll make you proud, Mom. I promise." Karen's heart swelled, and she reached out to pull both girls into a hug, her arms wrapping around them as if to shield them from all the world's hardships. Liam watched them, his heart brimming with gratitude. He knew that the love in this room was the result of years of sacrifice, of choices that had led them to this moment. That evening, as the rain continued to fall, Liam found himself looking back on his journey with Karen, remembering the struggles, the heartbreaks, and the triumphs they had shared. He had once been a man consumed by ambition, a man who believed that legacy was built on wealth and power. But now, he understood that legacy was something far deeper. After tucking the girls into bed, he joined Karen on the balcony, watching the rain glisten under the city lights. He took her hand, his gaze soft but intense. "Karen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I wouldn't be who I am without you. You've given me a life I never knew I could have, a family, a purpose. I owe everything to you." They found a small, secluded plot surrounded by trees, a place untouched by the city's relentless expansion. It was quiet, peaceful, almost magical in its simplicity. They walked around, breathing in the crisp air, marveling at the beauty of this hidden sanctuary. And as they stood together, Karen felt something shift inside her. This was where her journey had begun, a place filled with her mother's hopes and dreams. It was as if her mother's spirit was there with them, a gentle presence, guiding them toward a future she had dreamed of for her daughters. Liam turned to her, sensing her emotions. "Karen, this place, what do you want to do with it?" Karen looked at him, her gaze filled with certainty. "I want to build something here, a place for families who need a fresh start, a safe haven for people who, like my mother, sacrificed everything for their children. I want this land to become a sanctuary of hope." Liam nodded, his heart swelling with admiration. "Then that's what we'll do. Together." The project became a family endeavor, with Liam, Karen, and the girls working to transform the land into a retreat, a place for single parents, children, and those in need of healing. They built cottages, community spaces, and gardens, creating a refuge where people could find peace and support. The sanctuary, which they named Hope's Haven, became a testament to Karen's mother, a living embodiment of her legacy. Families from all walks of life came to stay, finding solace and strength, rebuilding their lives in the loving environment that Karen and Liam had created. For Liam, Hope's Haven was the fulfillment of his journey from a man driven by ambition to one fulfilled by compassion. And for Karen, it was a place where her mother's spirit lived on, a reminder of the strength that had carried her through every hardship. One evening, during the sanctuary's dedication ceremony, Karen and Liam stood together, watching as families and children filled the space with laughter and joy. Their daughters, now old enough to understand the significance of the day, stood beside them, beaming with pride. As the sun set over Hope's Haven, casting a warm, golden glow over the sanctuary, Liam wrapped an arm around Karen, pulling her close. "We did it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "We created something that will last, something that truly matters." Karen leaned into him, her heart full. "Yes, we did, and it's only the beginning." In that quiet moment, surrounded by the love they had built and the legacy they had created, they knew that they had found their purpose, a purpose that would carry on, touching lives long after they were gone. They had built a life defined not by riches or power, but by love and resilience. And in the hearts of the people they had helped, their story would live on, a testament to the strength of love, the beauty of family, and the enduring power of hope. Years went by, and Hope's Haven quickly became a symbol of hope and compassion, where people found comfort and a chance to start anew. Karen and Liam poured their hearts and souls into this place, turning it into the sanctuary they had always dreamed of, a true home, a space where everyone could feel loved and safe. One autumn day, as the golden leaves carpeted the path, Liam and Karen strolled around the grounds, admiring the fruits of their labor. The sounds of children's laughter echoed in the air, bright eyes and happy smiles filled the space. It was a sight of joy and unity they never thought they would create. Suddenly Rose, now a strong and kind teenager, approached, taking her parents' hands with a look of curiosity in her eyes. "Mom, Dad, do you think we could do great things like you one day?" Rose asked, her voice serious. Karen smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "Sweetheart, true strength doesn't lie in great things. It's in loving, caring, and sharing. The small things you do every day can change someone's world." Lily, the younger sister, also stepped forward, holding her head high, as if seeking reassurance. "So, when we grow up, we can continue this place, right, Mom?" Liam knelt down, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Of course, Lily. Everything we're building is for you, to continue, to keep the flame of love and help others. That's a responsibility, but it's also the greatest joy in life." The two girls nodded, their eyes filled with belief. In that moment, Karen and Liam felt the power of their family, not just in love, but in the continuation of a legacy of love preserved through generations. On another evening, when only the two of them remained in the cozy living room, Karen leaned against Liam's shoulder, her voice filled with pride and gratitude. "Liam, if it weren't for you, I could never have imagined this life. You didn't just change my life, you changed the lives of countless others." Liam smiled, gently taking Karen's hand. "Karen, you've taught me that love knows no limits, that life isn't just about wealth or power. All I can do is walk beside you and bring hope to those who need it." The two sat together, feeling the warmth of love and peace in their hearts, knowing they had built a life that surpassed even their wildest dreams. But then, a fierce storm approached when a group of investors attempted to take control of Hope's Haven. They saw profit in the land that Karen and Liam had transformed into a refuge. This news sent shockwaves through the community, and lawyers advised them to prepare for a legal battle. Liam looked at Karen, his eyes filled with determination, knowing this would not be an easy fight. "We won't let anyone destroy this place," Liam asserted, his gaze sharp. "This is our legacy, the hope of so many people. I will fight until the end." Karen squeezed his hand, her belief in him never stronger. "I trust you, Liam. No matter what happens, we will protect this place. Not for us, but for everyone looking for a safe home here." They began the legal fight, facing down ambitious forces who would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. But Karen and Liam were not alone. Families and individuals who had benefited from Hope's Haven united, organizing protests, sending petitions, and spreading the story of Hope's Haven far and wide. A sense of solidarity filled every action and every word of encouragement, making Karen and Liam unable to hold back the tears of joy as they witnessed the love they had planted blossoming. One winter day, in the crucial court session, when everything seemed darkest, the final verdict was announced. Hope's Haven would remain the property of Karen, Liam, and those they had helped. The courtroom erupted in cheers, tears of happiness streaming down Karen's face as she turned to embrace Liam. "We did it, Liam," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Not just us, Karen," Liam replied, his eyes gleaming with pride. "It was everyone, those who have stood with us to build this place." They left the courthouse, stepping into a world filled with hope and love. In that moment, they knew they hadn't just protected Hope's Haven, but had transmitted a powerful message that love and compassion could overcome any challenge. The court battle had ended, and the victory felt like a dream, but the journey was far from over. Karen and Liam had fought for what they believed in, and now they stood together with the community they had nurtured stronger than ever. But even in the joy of that hard-won triumph, there was a deep, underlying question they couldn't avoid. What next? The world outside was watching. Hope's Haven had become a symbol, not just of charity, but of resistance. Quickly, her heart racing. What was it now? Was someone hurt? Was there an issue with the building? She rushed downstairs, her feet barely touching the ground. And there, standing by the front door, was a man she hadn't seen in years. It was Jack, her father. "Jack," she whispered, her breath catching in her throat. He was older now, his face etched with time, his once proud posture now hunched. His clothes were worn, his hands trembling as they gripped the doorframe. She felt a flood of emotions, shock, confusion, and even a trace of fear. It had been so long. So much had happened since they last spoke. "What are you doing here?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack looked down at his feet, as if ashamed to meet her gaze. "I heard about what you've been doing. This place, Hope's Haven." He faltered, taking a deep breath. "I need help, Karen. I've lost everything. Again." Her heart tightened. This was the man who had left them all those years ago, who had chosen a path of his own, abandoning his family, abandoning her. He had caused her more pain than anyone could imagine, and yet here he was, asking for help. She looked at him, wondering if he was even capable of understanding the weight of his request. But something inside her stirred, something soft, something that remembered the little girl who had once clung to her father, hoping he would return. She had forgiven him long ago, though she hadn't realized it until now. And now, as an adult, with the scars of her past still fresh, she realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing herself from the chains of resentment. Liam stepped forward, his face steady. "Come inside, Jack," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You're not alone. No one here is alone." Karen stood there for a moment, staring at her father. She wanted to say so many things, to yell at him, to demand answers, to tell him he had no right to ask for anything. But instead, she simply nodded and gestured for him to come inside. "Thank you," Jack murmured, stepping over the threshold into the sanctuary. His voice cracked, and Karen could hear the shame and regret in his tone. The following days were a blur of emotions. Jack stayed in the spare room upstairs, keeping to himself most of the time. He didn't ask for anything, didn't try to explain the years of absence or neglect. He just quietly went about his days, helping around the house and avoiding eye contact with Karen. But something inside Karen began to change. She watched him, how he struggled to connect, how he longed to make amends without knowing how. There was a pain in him that mirrored her own, a pain she had long buried beneath the layers of her life. One afternoon, as Karen sat in the garden, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Jack. "You've been through so much," he began, his voice raw. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was weak. I was selfish. And now, I don't know if it's too late for me to make things right." Karen turned to face him, her heart beating faster. The words she had wanted to say for so long hung in the air between them. "It's not too late," she said softly. "But it's going to take time and effort. You'll have to prove that you're really here for us, that you've changed." Jack nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "I'll do whatever it takes. I've wasted enough time." And in that moment, Karen realized something she hadn't been able to grasp before. He wasn't the man who had hurt her anymore. He was just another person trying to heal. Just like her. She reached out, placing a hand on his. "We all have scars, Jack, but they don't define us. It's what we do with them that matters." Jack squeezed her hand, his heart breaking, but his soul finally beginning to heal. The weeks that followed were not easy. Jack worked hard to rebuild the trust that had been broken over the years. And although Karen had forgiven him, there were moments when she doubted if they could ever truly heal the wounds of the past. Yet with each passing day, they began to build something together. Jack was there when the sanctuary expanded. He helped with the children, shared stories of his life on the streets, and began to form genuine connections with the people around him. And just when they thought they had finally turned a corner, another challenge appeared, one that would shake their faith and force them to confront everything they had worked so hard for. Now, too, Karen looked at her daughter, seeing not just the child she had raised, but a young woman who was ready to take on the world. A sense of pride and relief washed over her, knowing that her own struggles had given birth to this new generation, stronger, more determined. "You're right," Karen replied, her voice full of gratitude. "We've built this together, and now we'll keep building it together." Liam, overhearing the conversation, joined them on the porch, his presence steady and reassuring. "Your mom's been carrying a lot, Rose," he said with a small smile. "But we've all been in this together from the beginning. Now it's time to pass the torch." Rose smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "I've already been carrying it, Dad. We all have. Hope's Haven is our home, and it's our future." The following months were a whirlwind of decisions and new challenges. As Hope's Haven grew, so did the responsibilities of running it. Karen and Liam found themselves dividing their time between managing the sanctuary and investing more in their family. And as much as they had dreamed of being together, sometimes they felt the weight of their ambition pressing against their hearts. One day, Karen decided to visit the sanctuary alone. She needed time to reflect. As she walked through the grounds, she spotted an elderly man sitting on a bench, his hands folded in his lap. He had been living at Hope's Haven for a while, a quiet, kind man with a story of loss. "Mr. Charles," Karen greeted him softly. "Miss Karen," he responded with a nod. "Just watching the children play. It reminds me." The old man's eyes twinkled with a wisdom that only age could provide. "You know," he began, his voice cracking slightly, "when you've lost everything, it's easy to forget that what matters is what you still have." He paused, as if the weight of his own words sank deep within him. But then something beautiful happens. People come into your life, and they remind you of all the things you thought were gone forever. Karen stood silently, taking in his words, but she didn't need him to finish. She already understood. Over the years, she had seen countless people come and go, each one carrying their own story of loss, of grief, of hopelessness. And each one, without fail, had left with a spark of hope rekindled in their hearts. Hope wasn't something they could give. It was something they could cultivate, help grow, and nurture. And the sanctuary, the place they had all worked so tirelessly to build, was where that hope could thrive. "Thank you, Mr. Charles," Karen whispered, her heart full, "for reminding me that even in the hardest times, we are never truly alone." As she turned to leave, a sudden, unexpected laugh broke the silence. She looked over and saw Liam, standing at the edge of the garden with a mischievous grin. "You know," he said, "I think Mr. Charles just gave you a whole sermon in under 5 minutes. You're getting soft, babe." Karen chuckled, the sound light and free, like a weight lifting off her shoulders. "I think we all need a little softness sometimes." Liam walked toward her, his arms opening in invitation. "Well, I'm here to offer plenty of that," he said, pulling her into a tight hug. "But let's not forget the toughness we've built. We're strong because we've had to be." Karen held him tight, her heart swelling with emotion. He was right. Toughness had been their foundation, but it was the softness, the compassion, the love that made their journey worth it. They had built a sanctuary that was a reflection of them. It wasn't just about the bricks and mortar. It was about the people, the stories, and the sacrifices that shaped it. And as they stood there together, they realized that their mission wasn't just to help the broken. It was to remind everyone, including themselves, that there was always hope, even when things seemed impossible. Weeks passed, and Hope's Haven began to flourish in ways Karen and Liam had never imagined. Word spread, and soon more people were coming forward, offering their skills, their time, their resources to support the cause. They received grants, donations, and partnerships that enabled them to expand their programs and reach even more people in need. But with success came new challenges. There were bureaucratic hurdles, opposition from those who didn't understand the mission, and the constant pressure to remain true to their ideals while navigating the complexities of growth. One evening, as Karen sat alone in her office, sorting through stacks of paperwork, she felt the weight of it all. She hadn't realized how much they had given up to get here. The late nights, the sacrifices, the constant juggling. The tension between doing what was right and doing what was necessary was starting to tear at her. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced down to see a message from Liam. It was simple, just one line, "Come outside. I've got something for you." Curious, Karen set down the papers and walked outside, her heart pounding. When she stepped onto the porch, she saw Liam standing in front of a small, rusted car. Is that our old car?" Karen asked, her voice full of disbelief. Liam grinned, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Yep, the one you said we'd never drive again after it broke down for the 3rd time. Guess what? It's fixed." Karen's heart skipped a beat. The old car, the one that had seen them through so many tough times, the one that had carried them from place to place when things were bleak, was back. In a way, it was a symbol, not just of the past they had worked so hard to leave behind, but of the resilience they had carried with them. "How? Why?" Karen asked, stepping closer. Liam chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "It's a long story, but let's just say, sometimes things need a little bit of love to make them run again." As she stood there, looking at the car, she felt a wave of emotion crash over her. The memories flooded back. The trips to the old church, the meals they could barely afford, the countless days when they didn't know how they were going to make it through. And yet, they had made it. Just like that old car, they had been repaired, rebuilt, and given a second chance. Karen turned to Liam, her voice trembling with gratitude. "We're not just surviving anymore, are we?" Liam smiled, his eyes soft. "No, we're living, Karen, and we're doing it together." And so, as the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, Hope's Haven continued to grow and evolve. Karen and Liam, alongside their children and the countless souls they had touched, became living proof that, even in the darkest times, there was always hope, always a chance for redemption, for healing, and for love. But it was never easy. There were still challenges, still moments of doubt. Yet, they learned to trust each other, to trust the community they had built, and, most importantly, to trust that no matter how hard things got, they were never truly alone. And in the end, that was the greatest gift of all. It had been months since Karen and Liam had made the decision to take a step back and rebuild their lives, but each day brought a new surprise. The car, the small sanctuary they were now managing, and the children they had welcomed into their hearts. Everything felt like it was unfolding in ways they never could have imagined. The town had slowly begun to notice them. The whispers turned to words of admiration. The once hesitant, uncertain community that had watched their every move now rallied behind them.